Hey there, have you ever wondered how a truly bulletproof political narrative gets built from the ground up? Well, welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to impartially unpack a highly charged piece of political commentary by Daniel Whitmore. We want to really examine the fascinating architecture behind his concept of absolute political warfare. Now, our goal here isn't to validate or debunk any of these claims. Instead, we're going to show you exactly how this specific, incredibly powerful partisan narrative is constructed. Okay, so to do that, let's look at our roadmap. We'll be breaking down this commentary into 5 thematic pillars: the total warfare narrative, redefining the presidency, the Middle East claims, dismissing the chaos, and lastly, the ultimate endgame. Let's jump right into section 1, the total warfare narrative, constructing the unbreakable protagonist. Whitmore starts by laying out what he sees as a massive arsenal deployed by the establishment, and he points to some incredibly startling events to prove his protagonist is just completely unflappable. We're talking about citing assassination attempts in Butler and West Palm Beach, and even an alleged shootout at the White House Correspondents' Dinner. You add in a weaponized Justice Department and the Mar-a-Lago raid, and his argument becomes crystal clear. Instead of breaking the former president, he argues these attacks, kind of like that historic mugshot, only forge a much stronger figure. Now think about the number 753. In any normal, traditional political analysis, having 753 active lawsuits would be a massive, glaring vulnerability, right? But watch how this narrative completely flips that on its head. Here, that number isn't a weakness at all. It's actually presented as the ultimate metric of the establishment's absolute desperation to stop him. And the financial hits? They're framed the exact same way. Think about the $88 million E. Jean Carroll penalty. To put that into perspective, it's an astronomical sum of money, but Whitmore doesn't frame it as a legal defeat. Instead, it's a calculated tactic by the establishment. The idea is to drain him financially and tie him up in court so he literally just cannot focus on leading the country. Which brings us to the absolute core sentiment of the entire argument. Winning means destroying the system that's been trying to destroy him. Mere survival is off the table. It's no longer the goal. The goal now is retaliatory destruction. The claim here is that Trump isn't playing defense anymore. He's taken the establishment's own rules and is using them to dismantle their whole system. All right, moving on to section 2, redefining the presidency, the institutional battlegrounds. The commentary maps out 3 massive vectors at the Supreme Court that could fundamentally rewrite presidential power, entirely bypassing Congress. First up, ending birthright citizenship, which he claims would instantly collapse the incentives for illegal immigration overnight. Second, utilizing national emergency powers to enact tariffs, essentially gaining unilateral control over global trade. And third, something called the slaughter case. Whitmore claims this could gut the administrative state entirely, even giving the president the power to fire the head of the Federal Reserve at will. The argument is that winning even half of these cases would result in historic, generation-defining power. We're talking about the presidency becoming more powerful than it's been since Franklin Roosevelt. But here's the really critical distinction Whitmore makes. Unlike Roosevelt, this power would be wielded by a leader who has literally zero desire to maintain any traditional establishment norms. Okay, let's shift gears to section 3, the Middle East claims, framing a foreign shooting war. So the narrative suddenly pivots from domestic courts to foreign policy, and it makes some incredibly bold claims here. Whitmore asserts that an actual coordinated shooting war involving Israel took place back in February. And the supposed results? A decapitated Iranian leadership, the closing of the Strait of Hormuz, and a strict naval blockade where 38 ships were turned away, choking Iranian oil exports down to absolute zero. Then comes this specific framing. Trump didn't start a war, he finished one. This line is used aggressively in the commentary to silence internal conservative critics. So when figures like Tucker Carlson or Marjorie Taylor Greene question these foreign policy actions, they're just waved off. Within this specific narrative, it wasn't warmongering at all. It was framed as necessary dominance over a 45-year enemy. Let's look at section 4, dismissing the chaos, spinning vulnerabilities into victories. You might be wondering, how does the speaker rationalize things like nervous Republicans or a 38% approval rating? Well, by completely ignoring the mainstream media's focus on chaos. Instead, he points straight to these specific first-year metrics: negative net migration, the removal of 2.6 million illegal aliens, a massive 56% drop in fentanyl trafficking, and the biggest decline in homicides on record. The core argument here? Ignore the noise because the underlying policy is wildly successful. And this logic leads directly to a very specific, 6-month prophecy. Whitmore predicts that all these current economic disruptions are going to resolve perfectly in sequence. Think about it like a timeline. Within 1 month, the Iran situation resolves. By month 3, alternative oil supplies stabilize prices. And by 6 months, the economy completely absorbs the new tariffs, and all that turbulence smooths out just in time for the midterms. That brings us to Section 5, the ultimate endgame, the final ideological clash. We have reached the climax of this narrative. Notice how this is no longer framed as just your standard everyday policy dispute between Republicans and Democrats. Instead, it's constructed as a stark, binary, existential survival battle. You have normal Americans representing a government by and for the people on one side, and on the other, the credentialed elite, this permanent bureaucracy that has supposedly ruled everything since World War II. To win this massive final clash, the administration is depicted as unleashing an extreme executive arsenal. According to Whitmore, this means the Justice Department investigating platforms like ActBlue and the SPLC, completely purging hostile law firms like Perkins Coie, pushing emergency powers to their absolute unyielding limits, and even using the military alongside aggressive executive orders. They are, in essence, playing by the establishment's rules now. And that perfectly sets up the core thesis of this entire commentary. They created their own worst nightmare, a president with nothing to lose. By trying to jail, bankrupt, and politically destroy him, Whitmore argues the establishment has essentially unlocked an unstoppable force. They've created their absolute worst nightmare, a president wielding unlimited executive power who is determined to burn down their power structure. So we leave you with the ultimate question posed by the speaker. Will the American people or the permanent bureaucracy run this country? It's a highly dramatic framing that sets up the next 6 months as the most intense political combat since the Civil War. It's honestly a masterful piece of rhetorical construction, turning every single attack into proof of a rigged system and every extreme action into a necessary strike for survival. So the next time you dive into political commentary, ask yourself, what kind of narrative architecture is being built right in front of you? Thanks so much for joining us on this explainer.